Hello everybody and welcome back to another brainstorm. So today we're going to be talking about fractions, decimals and percentages. So I'm going to be splitting this video up into three main parts. First of all, we're going to be talking about the difference between the three. Then we're going to be talking about how do we convert between them, so going from a fraction to a percentage or a decimal to a fraction, for example. And then we're going to go through some questions involving them together. So let's get into it. Alright, so let's kick it off by talking about what is a decimal, what's a percentage, and what's a fraction, and what's the difference between them. So here we have an example of all three. We have 0.5, which is our decimal, we have 50%, which is our percentage, and we have 1/2, which is a fraction. So before we go into a bit more detail, the most important thing we need to know is that even though these are all three very different looking things, we've got 0.5, 50%, and 1/2, these are all the same value or the same amount. They're just three different ways of showing that amount, okay? So for any decimal, the main thing to watch out for is this dot in between two numbers, and that's called the decimal point. For our percentage, we're always looking out for this percentage sign, okay? And for the fraction, you'll see it's two numbers split by the line, and that indicates a division, so it's 1 divided by 2, okay? This top number here is called the numerator, I'll put n, and the bottom number is called a denominator. But these are just three examples that are all worth the same amount. This decimal could be any two numbers. It could be 1.6. It could even be 0.05. Okay, that's all to do with the place value. This percentage here could be any number, 100% obviously, 8%, could even be 200%, okay? In the fraction, again, it could be any two numbers that are split, 6/7 or 10/2. Okay, so now let's discuss how do we convert between fractions, decimals and percentages. So we're going to start off by talking about if we have a decimal, how do we change that into a percentage? Okay, so the main rule here is that to convert a decimal to a percentage, we have to multiply the number by 100. So when we multiply any number by 100, our decimal place moves forward 2 spaces. So for 0.6, it's going to go forward 1 here and 2 here. We can imagine a 0 would have been here, and then we can see that is 60% because we've just times that by 100. We're going to do the same for 0.04. It's going to go 1, 2 right here. So we've just made the number 4. So therefore it's 4%. Remember to put the percentage symbol here. Okay. Now let's do it the other way around, going from a percentage to a decimal. So for this one, we multiplied by 100. To go the other way around, we have to divide by 100. So for this one, where our decimal place went forward to, this time it's going to go backwards to. Okay, so we've got 59, even though we can't see a decimal place here, there is an imaginary one at the end. It's going to go back to, so it's dot, dot there. So now we have 0.59. Now you could easily do these on a calculator as well, but it's just as easy to do on paper. So for 2, again, we're going to imagine that point's there. We're going to go 1, 2, fill in the gap with a 0, and you'll see we've got 0.02. Alright, so now we're going to do fractions to decimals, and the rule here is to convert a fraction to a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. Now you might remember from the first slide that the numerator is the top number of the fraction and the denominator is the bottom. And to get that into a decimal, we have to do the numerator divided by the denominator. So let's start with a half. Our numerator is 1, and we're going to divide that by the bottom number, the denominator, which is 2. Now we can do this as a short division, or we can use a calculator. I'm going to do the first one as a short division. So we have to do 2 into 1.00. 2 doesn't go into 1. It does go into 10 5 times. Put the decimal place in, and we can see that that is 0.5. Could have easily done that on a calculator, but you can do it in short division as well. Here we're going to do the same. We're going to do the numerator top number 7, denominator bottom number 8, 7 divided by 8. Now we could do this in short division, but it's probably quicker to do it in a calculator, and that comes out to be 0.875. So these are our decimals. Now if we want to do it the other way around, we want to go from a decimal to a fraction, it's a little bit more complicated. We have to put the number over 10, 100 or 1,000. Now how do we decide that? Well, we take this decimal here and we want to get rid of that decimal point to make it into a normal number. So for this one, we're going to move it forward 2 places, i.e. we're going to times it by 100, okay? So when we move something by 2 decimal places, we times it by 100, 1 is 10, and 3 is 1,000. Because we've moved it forward, we've now got the normal number 35, but because we've times it by 100, we need to put that number over 100 for our fraction. So that's okay. The only problem now that we have is that this is a complex fraction. We want to get a simple fraction, so we're going to simplify this 35 over 100. What do we mean by simplify? Well, to simplify a fraction, we times the numerator top number and the denominator bottom number, and we divide them by the same number, the biggest number possible, okay? So for 35 and 100, we can divide both of these by 5. So 35 divided by 5 is 7, 100 divided by 5 is 20, 7 over 20, okay? Alright, so the final set of conversions we're going to do is fractions to percentages and vice versa. So to go from a fraction to a percentage, we turn the fraction into a decimal and multiply by 100. There's no quick way to go from a fraction to a percentage, so we go first to a decimal and then turn that into a percentage. So you remember, for a fraction to a decimal, we do the top number 4 divided by the bottom number 5. You can do that on a calculator. It comes out to be 0.8. And we're going to times that by 100. So you remember, to times by 100, we move this decimal point forward 2. So we go 1. So it's 8, 2. 80. And remember the percentage symbol at the end. So it's 80%. And to go the other way from a percentage to a fraction, we put the percentage out of 100 and simplify. So what do I mean by that? This percentage symbol here, all it means is out of 100. So 60% is 60 out of 100. The same way that 8% would be 8 out of 100 and 75% will be 75 out of 100. So now we've got a fraction. The only problem is it's not simplified. So again, we're going to divide the top and bottom number by the biggest number possible, which in this case it is 20. And if we divide 60 by 20, that's 3. 100 divided by 20 is 5. And that's our simplified fraction, 3 over 5. Okay, so we've just gone fairly quickly through those conversions, so I'm going to quickly recap over them. So to go from a fraction to a percentage, remember that there's no quick way. We've just got to do the numerator, top number, divided by the denominator, which is the bottom number. Whatever that equals, we times that up by 100 to give us the percentage. Okay, then to go from the percentage over to the fraction, you remember a percentage is just a number over 100. So whatever our percentage is, we put that over 100, and then we'll simplify that to get the fraction. Then to go from a decimal to a percentage, so these two are the really easy ones, we times that up by 100. To go from a percentage to a decimal is the complete opposite, where we divide by 100. Okay, then to go from a decimal to a fraction, remember this one is quite tricky. We have to times that decimal up by either 10, 100, or 1,000. And then whatever we times it up by, we put it over that number. So it's 10, 100, or 1,000. And then we simplify that to get the fraction. Then, to go from fraction to a decimal, it's the simple one where we do the numerator divided by the denominator, the bottom number. Alright, so to wrap up this video, we're going to go through 2 typical exam questions that might come up for fractions, decimals, and percentages. Do feel free to do these along with me. So the most common question that we'll see is either going to be complete the table or just these simple conversions between the 3. So let's get into that. So we want to find the percentage form of 0.07 or 7 out of 100. And this is super simple because the fraction that's been given to us is already out of 100. And you remember that I said any percentage is just a number out of 100. So when we see 7 out of 100, we straight away know that that's going to be 7%, and we can put that straight in. Then it wants us to find the fraction form of either 0.35 and 35%. So we can do the opposite of what we did before. This time we're going to put 35 over 100 because it's a percentage, and then we have to simplify that. So please do remember that for these sort of questions, all your fraction answers have to be in the simplest form. So we're going to divide the top and divide the bottom by 5, 7 over 20. So we can write that straight down. And finally, we have to find the decimal form of either 60% or 3 over 5. So we're going to do 60%. You remember, to go from a percentage to a decimal, we have to divide that number by 100, i.e. the decimal place moves back 2 spaces. So that will give us 0.6 as the decimal. Okay, so for the second question, it says Samuel says that 25% is greater than 0.3. So the key to this question is going to be to put both of these numbers here into the same format. We want to put them both either as a percentage or a decimal, and then we'll make a decision. So 25%, we're going to go for percentage here because it's probably going to be easier. 25% is already a percentage. We just want to put this as a percentage too. So 0.3, we have to times that by 100. So that's going to give us 30%. Now Samuel says that 25% is bigger to what is 30%. So is he correct? We put no. And explain your answer. Well, we said that 0.3 is equivalent to 30%. And we know that 25% is less than 30%. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you guys all for watching. Please make sure you hit like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And I'll see you guys soon.